We have been brainwashed. We live in a society where we believe a harmful drug is a positive thing just so long as it's done in moderation. We have this false pretense about alcohol that it's not as bad as other drugs. We've been told things like a glass of wine a day will make you live longer, drinking will make you more successful, more outgoing, and we've also been told drinking is hard to quit, or if you drink too much you have a disease. It's pure insanity, mass insanity. And we are quite literally shaming people for getting addicted to an addictive substance that we as a society have encouraged people to use. Then we have programs like AA that simply do not work for a lot of people. Yet it's basically promoted as the only way to quit drinking. I would actually argue that AA actually does more harm than good, and that by telling people they have a disease and now need to use willpower to control their drinking, it is in essence shaming people and giving them false information. I mean, come on. The founder of AA literally died on his deathbed asking for whiskey. Yet this is the preferred method we use when it comes to quitting drinking. The truth is, you don't need AA. And the secret is, if you view alcohol as something that has a positive impact on your life, well then you'll always want to drink alcohol. It's not about quitting drinking. It's about changing your beliefs as well as the daily habits you form to live a better life. Like if you quit drinking and do nothing, I can promise you're not going to be happy. And you're going to go back to drinking every single time. But if you see alcohol as something that has no positive impact on your life and then you change your daily habits, not only can you quit drinking, but it's actually very easy to stay sober because you're becoming a better person in the process. And that's because progress equals happiness. And in this video today, I've compiled a list of some of my favorite motivational speeches to help you not only to quit drinking, but to live a better life. Check it out.
You got to have something that is large enough that it makes you crazy and you don't know that you can do it, but you got to know you can do it. I know it sounds ridiculous. There's got to be some part of you that turns it into a must, not a should. If it's a should, it gets done when it's easy. When it's a must, it happens no matter what. It's not about the goal, it's about who you become.
Now let me give you the secret to success. The formula for failure: a few errors in judgment repeated every day for 1 month starts the weakness, starts the disaster process. You can imagine what happens in 6 years. Now here's the formula for success. A few simple disciplines practiced every day. And if you decide today to go for the apple instead of the Hershey bar, I'm telling you, you have begun the process of turning your life around. And if you keep up that process, not only with your health habits, but with your money habits and with your communication habits, with your sales habits and management habits and every other habit that you've got, if you'll start that process, eliminate the errors and replace it with disciplines practiced, I'm telling you, you can start this process of life change immediately.
What's the best way to stop drinking alcohol and start doing my best in my psychology degree? It's affecting my study, but I can do very well if I stop. I'm 26. What I would say is one of the things that can really help you control your alcohol intake is to really think through what you're giving up and where you could be in 5 years if you don't get it under control. And a proclivity to alcoholism can be a really vicious thing. You know, lots of people get dragged down into the mud by alcohol, excess alcohol intake, especially if they're sensitive to the opiate response that alcohol can produce. And you can tell that if when you drink, you know, you get alert and, let's say, more enthusiastic and energetic, and then you don't want to stop drinking. I would say you need to figure out something that's more important to you than drinking.
If you find your passion, you're going to have this tremendous energy. It's sustainable energy. But momentum requires you always do the next thing to keep the momentum going. And the reason you get yourself in a passionate place is so that you change your life, and the only thing that changes your life is making a decision. So while you're in this passionate state, that's where you make decisions. You don't make decisions when you're like, oh, I don't know, what do you think? All right, let's decide. If you make a decision in a state without momentum, if you make a decision from a place where there's no passion, you are not going to get momentum. It'll kill momentum. It's decide, commit, and resolve. Some of you, in the past, you've gotten momentum, you've gotten passionate, you've even made a decision, but a decision is the first step. Decision is like a war. I got to do this or that. All right, I'm going to make myself do this. But commitment is when you now, after you've decided, you commit to do this for the long term. Whether it's hard or easy, doesn't matter. You're doing this. It takes it from this moment and it carries it into the future even when things are difficult. And the third state is resolve. Resolve means it's done. It's like, it doesn't even if you took action, it's done inside you, so it's done out there. There's no question whatsoever. Then once you decide, the only way the commitment and the energy and the momentum continues is if you take immediate, massive what, my friends? Massive what? Write down in your notes, massive action is the cure-all. Massive action is the cure-all. If you're having a difficult time with something, your relationship isn't where you want it to be, your finances are not where you want to be, your body's not where you want to be, your business is not where you want to be, you need to take massive action. And if that doesn't work, try something else. If that doesn't work, try something else. Keep going with massive action and you will find the way because it will give you momentum. If identity is how you've identified yourself and you see yourself as a procrastinator, why? Because you procrastinated so many times and disappointed, you don't want to be disappointed. So now you're a procrastinator, you're no longer disappointed. You feel certain, you'll never have your goals, but you feel certain. That's what most people do in their life. But if you set, let's say, a thermostat in this room at 78 degrees and the temperature drops far enough, something's going to happen. Because the computer's going to go, hey, you're at 78 degrees, what are you doing here at 68? And the heaters kick on and suddenly you get this drive. I'm sure your listeners or viewers have had this experience many times in their life where finally it's not another day, I'm changing this relationship, I'm losing this weight, I'm going to finally do something. And then you push. Now some people push and they go beyond their comfort zone, beyond what they expect, not their goals. It's what they're used to, it's their comfort zone. And let's say that 68 degrees is where they're used to financially. It's not what they want, or their relationship, or spiritually, or physically. And they grow to 88, 98, 99 degrees. Suddenly the brain goes, hey, what are you doing here? You're not a 99 degree. And then all of a sudden the heaters stop and you lose your drive. And if that's not about, the air conditioners kick on and you start to sabotage and you go, what happened to my life? So identity is the number one thing I work to change with people, to expand it, not to get rid of it. But expand your own sense of who you really are and what you're capable of. And people think they're going to get identity by, like people say to me, I have no self-esteem. I hate that word. So overused and abused. I don't have any self-esteem because when I was growing up, my parents said these terrible things and those terrible things. And I said, isn't it convenient you only remembered those things? They said a million things, but suddenly you've honed in on those. But let's get real. Someone can tell you your whole life you're a piece of crap, but you can say, screw you, read between the lines and make your life work. Someone tell you your whole life you're beautiful, you're intelligent, you're the smartest person in the world, and you don't believe it. Because self-esteem doesn't come from what people say about you. Self-esteem is earned within yourself. It's esteem for yourself, which only comes by doing things that are incredibly difficult, and then your brain goes, this is who I am. The reason I've done firewalks for years, I used to do skydiving, but it's hard to get 30,000 people in the middle of the air above New York in the middle of the night. But the reason I did these metaphors was because when someone does something they once thought was difficult or impossible, and they get the other side, their brain goes, if I can get myself to do this, what else can I get myself to do? It changes their identity. When your identity expands, your whole world expands.
Human beings absolutely follow through on who they believe they are. If you said to me, well, I'm really going to work hard to stop smoking, but I've been a smoker my whole life and I am a smoker. I know your days are numbered. You're going to be back smoking cigarettes again because we all act consistent with who we believe we are. I tell people the strongest force in the whole human personality is this need to stay consistent with how we define ourselves. If you define yourself as somebody who is really conservative, you're not going to be crazy and act nuts unless you're really drunk or something, and then you can say it's the alcohol. When it's really just you finally getting permission to be yourself, the alcohol is your excuse. If you're a really crazy person, you act crazy, outrageous, playful. You don't act conservative because that's not who you are. Very often people say, well, I can't do that. I'm not that kind of person. And I always say to people, really, when did you define yourself? I mean, really, how many years ago did you come up with what you could and couldn't do in your life? How many years ago? Most people, if they really look at how they're living their life today, it's based on a set of standards, a set of beliefs that they made choices about 10, 20, 30 or more years ago. I mean, very often we made decisions in our youth or very young about what to believe, about what we were capable of, about who we are as a person, and that becomes the glass ceiling, if you will, that controls us. There's a corny metaphor, but it's true. I remember one time I was with my family at the circus, and there was a person there, and they had this big, giant elephant, and you look at this elephant, and they take this little rope, put it around the elephant's neck, and they drive this stake into the ground. And I mean, you look at this and you know that elephant could rip down the entire tent with almost no effort. And yet the elephant doesn't struggle, doesn't try. Why? Because the elephant's conditioned. And they take that elephant and condition the elephant when it's a baby elephant. That's how they train him. When it's a little baby elephant and it doesn't have the power yet, they put a big rope around it and they drive this huge stake in the ground, and the elephant fights and fights and fights. And one day, finally, that elephant decides, I'm not capable of pulling this out. And once that becomes the definition of an identity of anyone, an elephant in this case, they don't even try anymore. It's just who I am, that's how it is, that's just the way it is in my life. I'd like to ask you to take a look at any place you've got a limitation and ask yourself, when did I decide to accept that limitation? And you may not even see it as a limitation, you might see it as just that's who I am. But so often in our lives, we've adapted to be a certain way so that we don't fail or so that people will like us or respect us, but it's not necessarily who we are. Joy comes when you're spontaneous. It's really hard to be truly happy when you're not being yourself. And most of us have no clue who we are. And so a big part of my work, if you've ever been to an event, you know, is to get people to do things spontaneously without thinking, because that's when the real you shows up. That's when the energy comes alive. And when you do that, when you start to connect to your true nature, suddenly there's energy available for you to set a higher standard for what you want in your life. That's what this is really all about. And when I talk about standards, when I talk about, shoulds versus musts, think about your own life. I know there have been areas in your life where some point in time you just shifted and you raised the standard and your life changed. Because whatever people have their identity attached to, they live. We live who we believe we are. That's just how it works. It's just kind of like, I'll give you an example. Look at your physical body. Your physical body today is an absolute reflection of only one thing, not your goals, not your desires, but your standards. The identity you have for yourself. If your standard is you're an athlete, then there's a certain amount of strength, a muscle tone, and energy that's available in your body on a regular basis because that's who you are. And so you do whatever's necessary to maintain that identity. Again, the strongest force in the human personality is this need to stay consistent with how we define ourselves. Because if you don't know who you are, you wouldn't know how to act. Once you lock in on that identity, your brain finds a way to keep you there. If you say, man, I'm overweight, I've always been overweight, I'm big boned, and that's the story you got, then you're gonna always find a way to get back there. That's your settling point. That's your identity. That's where things lock in. If you see somebody who's in really great shape, you ask them, do you work out? You know the answer. Yes, how often? And they'll tell you 3 times, 4 times, 5 times a week, whatever. In a seminar, I'll ask people, who here works out at least 5 days a week? And I'm stand up. And you look around that room, and you know that they work out 5 times a week because you can see their body. You don't just get a result without some kind of action, without some form of ritual. Ritual meaning actions you do consistently. Now, do you think those people that are out there working out 5 days a week, do they have more time than you do? Or I have, or anybody else? Of course not. Is their life less busy? Of course not. It's just a must for them. They must work out that way, and they've made that turn and their life changed. So I'm not saying you have to work out 5 days a week. I'm just saying whatever you really want, wants don't get met consistently. Standards do. Whatever you identify, this is who I am. And so it's not so much about changing your identity as there's expanding it. Deciding that, instead of your goals to lose 10 pounds, which is not compelling, what if your vision was to get back to my fighting weight? This year, this month, this next 90 days, I'm going to transform my body. I'm going to take on a new challenge. I'm going to find some technique or strategy. There's a million of them. that can reframe myself where I want to feel younger, stronger, more vibrant than ever before. Here's my reasons, because I want the energy to really make my life work, because it's tough out there and I want to be stronger than I've ever been before. I want to go in front of the mirror and if I'm naked, not, want to laugh. I want to look there and take a good look and go, yeah, I'm proud of whatever I see there. Whatever it takes, something's gonna make you laugh, smile, something's gonna tease yourself, but something's gonna move you to another level. If you identify yourself in a new way and you own that every day, and that becomes the standard of how you live, you'll find the way to make that standard real. Money's the same way. Think about it, it doesn't matter what's happening, quote unquote, in the marketplace. People that make money find a way to make money no matter what, don't they? I mean, most people's standard is to pay their bills. So that's what most people find a way to do, even when economic times get tough. Most people, if that's their absolute standard, they find a way. Some people's standard is pay their bills most of the time. And so most of the time they do. Some people's standard is not just to pay their bills, but to take care of their family and maybe even some of their friends. And they find a way. In fact, some people may be in a family where they don't have enough money. They barely have money to pay their bills. They work their guts out. And then somebody, their mother, their father, somebody else, their sister gets ill, and there's not enough money to take care of it. Nobody else has money in the family. They don't either, but they find a way to get that money to take care of their mother or father, don't they? And pay their bills. They never could do it before. Why? The situation made them raise their own standard. And not everybody does that. Somebody else in the family might have money and still not take care of their mother. It all comes down to the inner game, my friends. Changing your life is a change in the inner game. The outside world you can't control, but you have absolute control over this one if you learn the dynamics of what shapes you. And identity is one of those simple, clear, fundamental basics that if you start to shift it, everything else will shift in your life as well.
Well, first, people get vested in their trauma. People get vested in their pain. If you want to know the largest drug on the planet, it's not cocaine. It's not heroin. It's not pot. It's not, some prescription drug. The biggest, drug on the planet is problems. Because everyone has a deep fear. Everyone. And the deepest fears we have are two. One is that we're not enough. We're not smart enough, young enough, rich enough, pretty enough, funny enough, something enough. And if we're not enough, it's the deepest fear we have, which is we won't be loved. And love is the oxygen of the soul. So, a baby is, if they're not physically, kinesthetically loved, they develop what's called failure to thrive syndrome. That's how desperate our nervous system is for love. So human beings, when they think, oh my God, if I fail at this, it'll look like I'm not enough and I won't be worthy of love, they tend to come up with a reason why that's either not their fault, it's something that was done to me. I've got ADHD, I was born with it, I was raped, I was whatever. And they might even tell the truth. Someone may have really raped them. It's a horrible situation. But other people have raped and they've gotten through it and they're on the other side of it. This person hasn't because it becomes their reason for not being where they want to be in their life. And so the bottom line is a mother can lose her daughter or son through a drunk driver and spend the rest of their life in pain. And another one creates MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, and does something about it and feels a sense of freedom and a sense of serving that child and a sense of higher purpose in what they're doing. So it's not the problem. It's not the trauma. It's finding what they value more than the problem. And everyone has a place where there's something they value more than their trauma. Some people got their trauma because they realize I've been so traumatized, loss of this child, that my other child feels completely unloved. And they realize I'm losing that love. I'm losing that child if I don't get my shit together, right? They need a higher level of what's called leverage. Leverage is what makes change a must, not a should. As long as it's a should, you'll have your story. And your story could be a true story. And you'll tell your story and share your story with yourself or other people or both, and you stay stuck. But trauma is, it is not, it's a bruise. It's not a tattoo, right? Any bruise can be healed, but not unless you're vested in healing it. And what a lot of people do, I remember when I was diagnosed with a tumor in my brain, I've seen this happen so much that I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even tell my spouse at the time the first day. I was trying to process it because I didn't want people to start treating me differently. And so the only person who knew for the first day or two was my assistant because she had talked to the doctor. So before I'd even been able to tell my spouse at the time, all of a sudden, everyone treated me like I was indestructible. I taught people to do that. It's like, because I want to help everybody. So there was no. It's like, I'll do whatever it takes, right? So it was inhuman at the time. And suddenly my assistant starts saying, we shouldn't book that right now. And we shouldn't do this right now. And I started getting love and attention and connection for having this problem. And I was like, whoa. I'm not going to go down that slippery slope. But that takes a really conscious mind to do it. And lucky for me, I've had a chance to deal with millions of people, so I see these patterns all the time. But most people, their problem is their drug. It's the drug against the fear that I'm not enough and I won't be loved. Even if they go, no, it's me, I'm so messed up, what they're really saying is reassure me, love me. They're wanting that connection through their problem. So you got to decide there's something you value more than your problem. When you decide that, you can make it happen. But most people aren't going to do that unless they get in an environment where they see that happening.